10 Sinister Cryptid Encounters Exposed, Spine-chilling horror stories from haunted Kentucky. The shadows in Willow Creek Hospital felt thicker that night. Jenna, a weary nurse, scanned the dimly lit hallways where the soft beeping of machines echoed like distant warnings. Strange whispers of the Moonlight Stalker had begun creeping around town, chilling the very bones of those who dared mention it. Kids in school joked about it, but adults spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting nervously. Jenna dismissed the folklore, rolling her eyes at the absurdity. Ghost stories, she muttered under her breath as she rounded the corner. Yet, as each shift unfolded, a sense of foreboding gripped her heart like a vice. She chuckled nervously, shaking her head when Mrs. Fletcher, an elderly woman with sunken cheeks, startled her with wild eyes. "I saw it, Jenna. The Moonlight Stalker. Right outside my window." Her hands trembled as she recounted her encounter. Jenna laughed again, but her stomach knotted. The hairs on her neck prickled, she could feel the weight of the woman's fear. Something was out there, but surely it was just a figment of a restless mind. Yet as the wind howled outside, a gnawing discomfort festered deep within her. The stillness of the night amplified every sound. Every creak and moan of the old hospital building reverberated ominously. Jenna paced the wards, occasionally peering out the window, half expecting to find a lurking figure in the trees. But the tree-line remained silent and shadowed, concealing possible horrors. A chill raced through her when she noticed oddities, faint rustles just out of sight, the flicker of movement too fast to catch. It gnawed at her reason, amplifying her dread. Reports spread like wildfire, splattered across social media feeds. Pets vanished without a trace. Lost dog. Missing cat. Panic simmered just beneath the surface of everyday life. Before Jenna could even catch her breath, her close friend, another nurse, disappeared after her shift that very night. Jenna's pulse quickened as fear gripped her. How could the police dismiss her immediacy? A knot formed in her stomach, heavy and unyielding. She needed answers. Unable to ignore her instincts, Jenna ventured out into the curl of the night. The moon hung low and menacing, its light barely piercing through the clouds. She found herself on the forgotten country roads, the creaking of decaying homes looming over her like specters. Each sight whispered secrets of abandonment, broken windows, rotting wood, echoes of a community's failed hopes. The atmosphere was thick with despair, everything felt wrong. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but it was becoming harder and harder to breathe. Jenna stumbled upon an unsettling connection. Whispers of the Moonlight Stalker intertwined with the town's buried sins and guilt, mounting like a jagged pile of bones. The echo of the past came rushing back as shadows crowded her, darkness pooling closer. Her heart thundered when the silence shattered. A guttural growl resonated from the woods, sickening her with fear. The weight of betrayal loomed larger. How could the people of her community, her friends, let this happen? Jenna froze, fear navigating through her veins, as she took a trembling step back. Then her phone buzzed, slicing through the chilling air. She glanced at the screen, her heart plummeting there. A video with a single word flashed: run. In that moment, Jenna realized the monsters hiding in the dark might be the ones she'd trusted all along. As the shadows moved closer, she could feel despair creeping in, and all she could wonder was escape ever really possible? The growl echoed again, deeper this time, vibrating against her bones. Jenna's instincts kicked in, and she spun on her heel, racing back toward the hospital, her heart pounding like a drum in a frantic parade. As she sprinted over the uneven ground, shadows lengthened and twisted, threatening to swallow her whole. The wind howled, mocking her fear, as every darkness seemed alive, crawling with all the creatures of her nightmares. There was no comfort in the hospital now. The familiar hallway stretched into hallucinatory nightmares, the flickering fluorescent lights casting erratic shadows that danced just outside her peripheral vision. She dashed to the nurse's station, praying to find anyone to share her fear with, but the station stood empty. A thick silence enveloped the space, broken only by the distant beep of a heart monitor echoing through the halls like a ticking clock counting down to catastrophe. Jenna grabbed the phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed her friend's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic tightened her chest. "Where are you, Sarah?" she whispered, her voice feeling tiny in the sprawling void surrounding her. Stepping away from the counter, she scoured the room, looking for anything to distract her from the gnawing dread creeping back up. Suddenly, an intense cold sliced through the air. The fluorescent lights flickered violently, and Jenna felt that indescribable sensation of being watched. She turned her head slowly, her eyes scanning every corner of the dim room. The feeling settled on her like a heavy blanket, suffocating and pervasive. "Hello?" she called out, her voice shaky. The silence was her only answer. But then, a sound followed, barely audible at first, a soft scratching, like claws on tile. The noise cut through her courage, dragging it down into a pit of unyielding fear. Swallowing hard, she stepped back, fighting off the urge to hide. "Enough!" Jenna shouted, her tone fierce despite the trepidation curling inside her. "What do you want?" The question hung thick in the air, but the response was nothing but more scratching. Urging herself to be brave, she approached the door to the staff lounge, heart hammering in her chest. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. Light flickered, illuminating the shadows in a sickly manner. There, half hidden behind the coffee machine, a shape shifted in the darkness, a figure, tall and lean with wet, matted hair hanging over its sharp features. It had no eyes, just dark, glimmering voids that stared into her very soul. Jenna's breath caught in her throat, trapped like a bird in a cage. She felt as if she were sinking, her body rewiring itself to flee, but she couldn't look away. The creature tilted its head, twitching in a grotesque mimicry of a human gesture, and in that moment, the air grew electric with malice. "Help us!" a voice choked out from the figure, haunting and raspy. It was a voice she recognized, Sarah's pleading tone threaded through the darkness. Her heart splintered. Standing frozen, Jenna realized that whatever this creature was, it wore the faces of the missing, mingled with her friend's voice, pleading for help from a place that made no sense. With desperation clawing at her insides, Jenna cringed and turned, bolting out of the staff room, her feet pounding against the tile. She shot down the hallway, determined to find safety, to call for help. But behind her, the sound of rapid footsteps grew, echoing her frantic retreat. The moonlight stalker was no longer just a tale, it was right behind her, hunting her down. As she neared the exit, the heavy door loomed like a sanctuary. With one last burst of energy, she lunged for it. The moment she crashed through the doors, she rounded back to face the darkness spilling out from the hospital. The parking lot lay bathed in cold silver moonlight, starkly devoid of any life, yet something deep in her gut told her that the night was far from over. In the distance, the trees began to stir. A haunting whisper slipped on the wind, chilling her to the bone. That voice was her friend, truly lost to the shadows? As Jenna stared into the night, heart racing, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching from the tree-line. What had come for her now lay waiting in the depths of the woods, an unrelenting predator poised to pounce. Did she have what it takes to uncover the heart of the darkness in Willow Creek, or would she too become just another whispered tale? The night wrapped around Jenna like a suffocating shroud. She stood at the edge of the parking lot, adrenaline coursing through her veins, every instinct screaming for her to run. The wind whipped at her hair, a ghostly reminder of the horrors lurking just beyond her sight. She fought the urge to bolt into the trees, knowing that whatever prowled the shadows was not merely a figment of her imagination. As she stood frozen, the whispering grew louder, weaving through the branches like snakes slithering closer. "Help us!" It was Sarah's voice, echoing over and over in her mind, trapping her in a web of guilt and terror. Jenna shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. No, she couldn't think about that now. She had to focus. She took a tentative step toward her car, the metallic click of the lock echoing in the oppressive silence. Jenna felt a tingle of hope. If she could just drive away, escape this nightmare, everything might return to normal. But as she reached for the handle, a low growl erupted from the darkness, deep and primal, shaking her core and tearing at her sanity. Jenna spun around, the hairs on her neck standing on end. A shadow shifted between the trees, fluid and sinuous. It was lower to the ground, slinking toward her, a predator stalking its prey. She stumbled back, panic swelling inside her. She didn't want to die here, not like this. With frantic urgency, she dashed to her passenger side door, fumbling to get it open. The growls intensified, reverberating through the night as the creature closed in. Jenna's breath came in ragged gasps as the car didn't respond to her panic. The lock clicked frustratingly, reminding her she had to push down harder. In a desperate fit, she managed to yank the door open. She dove inside, locking the door behind her as adrenaline kicked up a notch. But as she turned, her heart sank. The back window, dimly illuminated by the moonlight, revealed a set of dark, glistening eyes staring back at her, calm yet hungry. Jenna screamed, pressing her back against the seat, searching for her phone. She fumbled and cursed, her fingers shaking so violently that it slipped from her grasp. She could feel the creature's breath now, hot and rancid, against the glass. It scratched at the window, sharp claws raking furrows along the surface, reminding her of the urgency to escape. Time was running out. "Come on," Jenna begged, tears pooling in her eyes. The cold sweat clung to her skin, panic overpowering all rational thought. She grabbed her phone, heart thundering louder than the growing storm outside, and dialed Sarah's number again. To her shock, it rang. "Please pick up." Each tone was a whisper of hope against overwhelming dread. But only silence answered her plea. The creature outside let out a low snarl, its shadow creeping closer. Jenna could make out its features now slender, elongated limbs with jagged edges seemed to merge with the darkness, spilling from the treeline like a flowing liquid nightmare. It wasn't just the moonlight stalker, it was something else entirely, darker, more insatiable. With each second passing, Jenna knew she had to act. She couldn't stay trapped in this metal cage, she had to drive. Summoning every ounce of strength, she started the engine, the roar a temporary comfort amidst the chaos. But as she shifted into gear, the headlights illuminated the creature fully, a grotesque fusion of her fears materialized. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of teeth that seemed to shimmer in the faint light, and it let out a bone-chilling howl. Jenna didn't think. She slammed her foot on the gas pedal. The tires squealed as she surged forward, swallowing her fear with overwhelming velocity, chasing one desperate thought, escape. But as she tore from the parking lot and into the night, the shadows closed in behind her. She glanced at the rearview mirror and the creature followed, an ominous shape against the fading glow of the hospital exit. Had she truly fled, or was this just the beginning? The trees closed around her as the road ahead twisted into darkness. The sound of snarls filled the air, echoing in a sinister chant. Maybe she could shake it off, leave Willow Creek behind. But what horrors lurked in the depths of the woods? Each turn of the road drew her closer to the edge of the unknown, a place where reality blurred and terror reigned. And among the shadows, something kept watching, judging. If Jenna could survive this night, would she find answers, or would she become part of old tales whispered in fear? The tires screamed against the asphalt as Jenna drove, the thumping of her heart a wild rhythm in her ears. Each jolt of the car felt like a reminder of how close death was, rattling her bones. The road wound like a serpent, coiling deeper into the woods, and the headlights flickered against the trees, casting brief splashes of light that revealed nothing but darkness ahead. She didn't dare look back. The image of those glistening eyes haunted her vision, scraping against her sanity like the claws had done to her car. The growl still echoed in her chest, a distant reminder that she wasn't alone in this hell. The gnawing thought turned her stomach. What if this thing could chase her down the road? What if it was faster? The speedometer crept up, and the car began to tremble as she pushed it harder. She heard the wind howl outside, matching her own rising fear, a cacophony of anguish. The headlights glared onto the shimmering wet road, but she felt the grip of unease tightening. The shadows lurked too close, shifting just beyond her field of vision, taunting her. Jenna's phone buzzed in her lap, a message. She snatched it up, praying for a signal. Her fingers flew to the screen. Maybe there was a chance to call for help, but her heart plummeted when she saw only one word: danger. It was from Sarah, sent just before everything went dark. Jenna shivered, the blood draining from her face. How did she know? With a jerk, she yanked the steering wheel to avoid a sudden curve. The headlights caught a flash of movement, something darting between the trunks. Jenna clenched her jaw, trying to focus, to dismiss the terror threatening to overwhelm her. She had to keep going. She had to escape. Suddenly, the car jolted violently, swerving to the side. Panic surged through her as the tires lost grip, sending her into a spin. The world outside twisted like a kaleidoscope, and the dashboard lights blurred into a swirl of panic. She gasped, fighting for control, her fingers clawing at the wheel as desperation clawed at her heart. Finally, the car slammed down hard against something, coming to a stop with a jarring thud. Breathing heavily, disoriented, she glanced around and her stomach sank. She had veered off the road and into the underbrush. The engine sputtered, barely alive. The darkness around her felt heavier now, wrapping her like a suffocating blanket. She scanned the area, frantically searching through the fogged windows. The eerie silence taunted her, as if the woods were holding their breath. A low growl echoed again, but this time it was different, closer, a rumble of menace right at her window. Panic gripped her throat, and she quickly grabbed her phone, trying to reassure herself that she could still call someone. But there was no signal. The words on the screen buzzed in her mind: danger. Had it always been there, waiting to ensnare her? A rustling sound outside interrupted her thoughts. It came from the passenger side, the area closest to where the creature had pursued her. Jenna held her breath, mind racing. Should she take a chance and open the door? Fear churned her stomach. The lights were dimming, she could barely see anything outside. As she slowly turned towards the side window, a shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. Before she could react, a figure lunged against her window, fingers, long and claw-like, pressed down hard, leaving trails of wetness as they slid and clawed at the glass. Her scream ripped through the stillness, a sound of pure survival instinct. Just then, the engine sputtered to life. A flicker of hope surged through her. Without thinking, she slammed her foot on the gas pedal again, but just as the tires began to screech forward, the power went out. Complete darkness engulfed her, and the roar of silence was shattered as a desperate howl erupted from the woods. Trapped in the dark, she clutched the steering wheel, heart pounding like a drum. What was out there? What had followed her into the night? And more importantly, was she running away from something or toward it? She could feel the breath of the woods closing in around her as a flicker of movement flashed past her window again. Jenna's blood ran cold. Something was waiting for her outside. Would she be able to break free from this trap, or was it all leading to something far worse? The air thickened. Jenna's breath grew shallow, her chest heaving under the weight of dread. The growling echoed around her, a chorus of low rumbles that reverberated through the metal frame of her car. Every instinct told her to stay still, but she felt the urgency clawing at her inside. She couldn't remain a target in this suffocating darkness. With trembling hands, she fumbled to crank the window open just a fraction. The wind whipped in, carrying scents of damp earth and decaying leaves, but there was something more. A rotten odor, pungent and nauseating, twisted into her nostrils. With a quick glance to the side, she caught a flicker of movement, a shadow darting behind the trees, always just out of reach of the beam from her dying headlights. Then, silence fell. It was unsettling, a void where the growls had been. Jenna strained to listen, her heart hammering in her ears. Was it gone? Or was it waiting for her to make the next move? Think, Jenna, think, she muttered under her breath. If only her phone had a signal. If only she could reach someone, anyone. The dashboard flickered, and the car settled into a palpable stillness that felt almost unnatural. Then came the scratching, subtle at first, like fingers raking softly against the metal of her car. Her heart leaped into her throat. She zeroed in on the sound, each scrape sending jolts of panic coursing through her. But there was more, a whisper of breath, hot and heavy, brushing against her window. It shouldn't he have been able to get so close? Feeling cornered, Jenna instinctively shuffled her eyes around the tiny car cabin. She needed a weapon, anything she could use in case it forced its way inside. The glove compartment. She tore it open, her hands trembling as she rummaged through the bits and pieces of junk, old receipts, an empty wrapper, a lonely pack of gum. Nothing useful. The scratching intensified, and she felt clammy sweat drift down her spine. Come on. It has to be. She glanced up just as a shadow flitted past her passenger side, not from outside but inside. A dark figure crouched low in the back seat, a grotesque, twisted silhouette. Her insides turned to ice. It raised its head, and those eyes, those glistening eyes, locked onto hers. It was worse than she remembered, a face distorted and sickly, grinning wide, its teeth yellowed and sharp. Fear gripped her, squeezing tighter. She shot back against her seat, heart racing, her hands clenching the steering wheel until her knuckles turned pale. This was it. She had to move. Throwing the door open seemed impossible, yet staying put would mean certain doom. She could hear the blood pounding in her ears, roaring like a waterfall. Without thinking, Jenna reached for the gear shift, her eyes glued to that creature. She slammed the car into reverse, praying desperately that it would give her a moment's advantage. She felt a surge of adrenaline as the car jolted backward. In an instant, the creature leapt toward her, fingers reaching out as if to grasp her throat. The headlights blazed back to life, illuminating the woods just as she pressed the accelerator into the floor. The tires screeched, and in a burst, the car lurched forward, ripping free from its embrace of fear. But there was a horrifying realization that crept in like a cold fog. She didn't know where she was going. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a corridor of night. The world outside blurred into a swirl of black shapes, but as glimpses of the forest passed her, Jenna spotted them again, figures, shadowy and tall, standing just beyond her vision, almost like sentinels waiting for her to falter. Screams filled the air again. Not hers, but distant, echoing through the trees, a chorus of souls lost to the darkness. What had she stumbled into? The thought twisted inside her. The car was not just escaping, it was drawing her closer to something far worse, something lurking in the woods that had been waiting for her all along. Jenna slammed her foot on the gas, the speedometer climbing perilously higher. But was this escape or just another trap? Ahead, a figure emerged, blocking the path. Her heart plummeted. Who or what was waiting for her in the road? The night felt far from over. Jenna's pulse quickened as she fought to make sense of the silhouette looming ahead. In the dim light, it was hard to distinguish the shape, but it looked almost human. Panic shot through her veins. Was it a friend? A rescue? Or another twisted creature in this nightmarish forest? She swerved hard, her tires screeching against the asphalt as she narrowly missed it. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching her with an unsettling calmness. As she sped away, she spared a glance in the mirror. It was still there, standing like a sentinel among the trees, eyes glinting in the darkness. Jenna's thoughts raced, swallowing her fear momentarily. I have to find help. She maneuvered through the winding path, the oppressive trees closing in. Shadows flitted beyond her peripheral vision, taunting her from the edges of the road. Each rustle of leaves felt like a whisper, secrets of the night extending their hands toward her, beckoning her to join whatever horrors lurked beyond. Suddenly, her headlights caught sight of something up ahead, a faint glow nestling in the underbrush. A cabin? Hope surged through her, filling her with a reckless determination. I can make it, she murmured through gritted teeth. She pressed the accelerator harder, the engine growling as loudly as the nightmares chasing her. As she neared the source of light, her heart thudded harshly in her chest, threatening to spill over. The cabin loomed ahead, dilapidated and forlorn, yet warm rays poured from its cracked windows. Something felt inherently wrong about it, an inviting light standing lonely in the heart of darkness. But she had no choice. Throwing the car into park, she leaped from the driver's seat, fumbling for the door of the cabin. Each step felt like a mile, the air thickening around her as she approached. The creaking door swung open before she even touched it, an invitation or a trap. Hello? Her voice wavered, swallowed by the dense silence. The interior was bathed in an eerie, flickering light, illuminating cabinets laden with dusty relics and remnants of lives long forgotten. The dust motes danced like ethereal spirits caught between worlds. Is anyone here? No response. Just the echo of her own voice, taunting her as she crossed the threshold. The oppressive chill sank into her bones, sending shivers down her spine. She stepped further inside, peering into shadowed corners, the unease swelling inside her like a swelling tide. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, as if the very house itself had taken a breath. Heart pounding, she spun around. The room was now darker, the glow from the windows extinguished as thick shadows crept in, blanketing her escape. Panic clawed at her throat. Where was it? The growling? The scratching? She could feel a presence close, menacing, lurking in the darkness with malevolent intent. Jenna turned and grabbed a heavy iron candlestick from the mantel. Her hands shook as she gripped the cold metal. Come on, show yourself. The challenge fell flat, swallowed by the darkness. A soft rustling came from behind her. She spun, the candlestick raised high, ready to strike. But it was too late. In the split second it took to focus, something lunged out from the shadows. Fang jaws opened wide, a grotesque smile slashed across a pale, contorted face. It was the creature, that same wretched figure from the car, but now it was joined by others. More twisted forms revealed themselves in the dim light, their eyes glistening with a predatory hunger. Her breath caught in her throat, every instinct igniting fight or flight, yet there was nowhere to escape. The cabin closed in around her, darkness pooling at her feet as their growls harmonized into a chilling choir of despair. Jenna glanced around frantically. There had to be a way out. But an icy laugh crept through the air, wrapping around her, locking her in place. You shouldn't have come here, it whispered with haunting delight. With adrenaline coursing through her, Jenna dashed for the back of the cabin, her mind racing as she tore through the shadows. The figures lunged. But she was focused. A flickering beam of light swept through the cracks in the wooden walls. It led her to an old window that had been left ajar. Hope surged. But outside, the night was alive, and waiting. What horrors awaited her outside? The answer beckoned just beyond the glass. Jenna flung the window open, ready to leap into the unknown, but she paused. It felt like breaking through a threshold into another world, and something told her, once she jumped, there would be no turning back. Would this lead her to freedom or deeper into the abyss? Jenna took a deep breath, her heart racing like a wild animal. The sounds behind her morphed into an insidious chant, desperate and hungry. With one quick glance over her shoulder, she could see their grotesque faces contorting, eyes wide with unhinged anticipation. She couldn't stay here. The only option was to leap into the darkness outside. Shoving her fear aside, Jenna climbed through the window, shards of glass glistening dangerously around her. She felt the jagged edges nip at her skin, but the threat of those waiting behind forced her to ignore the pain. As she hit the ground outside, the chill night air hit her like a wave, a stark contrast to the heavy, stale air of the cabin. For one fleeting moment, she thought she was free. She spun around, expecting to see the darkened cabin receding into shadows. But no one of them lunged through the window, landing in front of her with an unnerving grace. It snarled, its slathering jaws wide, glinting with a hunger that sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over her. "Run!" Jenna screamed, adrenaline pumping ferociously in her veins. She dashed into the trees, branches slapping her face like icy hands. The woods were alive with rustling sounds, otherworldly whispers echoing all around her. There was no telling what awaited her amongst the dark. Footsteps echoed behind her, heavy and relentless. She was not alone, they were hunting her. She stumbled through the underbrush, tripping over roots and stones. The thumping of her heart drowned out the cacophony of night sounds, but she could still hear them, the growls and snarls trailing closely. Suddenly, Jenna caught a glimpse of figures in the moonlight, fleeting shadows among the trees. Panic clawed at her throat. She felt trapped not just in the forest, but in some malevolent game that had begun in the cabin and had now spilled into the night. "No! No!" She panted, tearing past towering trees, feeling their gnarled branches scrape against her arms. She needed to find a path, a road, anything that could lead to safety. But the deeper she ran, the thicker the darkness felt, as if the forest was drawing her further into its sinister embrace. Then came the silence. It fell suddenly, enveloping her like a heavy shroud. The sounds of pursuit disappeared, replaced by an eerie stillness that made her skin prickle. Jenna stopped, her breath heaving in and out, looking around wildly. "Where are you?" she whispered, straining to hear even the slightest noise. But nothing answered. It was as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting. Her instincts screamed at her to keep moving, yet something deep inside urged her to listen. Then she heard a faint rustling, not too far off. Jenna whipped her head toward the sound, her chest tightening. Shadows darted between the trees, mocking her trembles, their shapes slipping in and out of sight. They were out there, lurking, and they knew she was vulnerable now. She backed away slowly, trying to gauge their position, when another sound broke the silence, a low, drawn-out laugh that echoed hauntingly, chilling her to the core. It was sinister and mocking, sending a cold shiver down her spine. "Come join us," the voice taunted, echoing from all around, disembodied yet close. Jenna felt her resolve wavering. What did they want with her? There was no escape. The reality weighed heavy on her, caught between the creatures that craved her flesh and the bewildering woods that twisted into an unfamiliar maze. Just as her mind began to spiral into despair, she spotted a flicker of light through the trees. Hope surged anew. But was it a welcoming light or another trap? Did she dare take the risk? Gathering every ounce of bravery, Jenna took off toward it, fear crawling along her skin. But as she ran, those shadows chased behind, ever closer, as the chilling laughter returned, a cacophony of distorted voices that seemed to dance among the trees. Would she reach that light before they descended upon her? Or would their hunger consume her before dawn? Jenna bolted through the underbrush, every step a frantic dance with uncertainty. The flickering light ahead pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing her in, promising refuge yet cloaked in mystery. Shadows whipped past her, stalking with the intent of predators. She could feel their breath on her neck, hot and rancid. As she ran, the laughter from behind became a halting rhythm, like a twisted song that echoed through the trees. "Come join us," it sang, teasing, beckoning. She gritted her teeth, trying to block it out, trying to drown it in her own resolve to survive. The light shimmered just ahead, a small clearing framed by ancient trees whose twisted limbs seemed to point fingers in accusation. Jenna leaped into the clearing, heart pounding louder than ever, a beacon or a trap. It was now or never. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The atmosphere thickened, as if she had entered an entirely different realm. The crippling stillness swallowed the sounds of the forest, even the howling laughter dimmed to a whisper. She blinked, trying to make sense of what she saw. Before her, a fire blazed, casting eerie shadows against the trees. Surrounding it were figures cloaked in darkness. They sat, unmoving, joined in a circle, their faces hidden beneath hoods. The flames flickered, revealing a glimpse of pale, twisted hands clutching at bones. It was a gathering of the damned, and the reality of her situation struck her like a physical blow. Jenna's heart sank as dread clawed at her insides. The reprieve she thought she had found felt like a final resting place instead. The hunger in the woods hadn't vanished, it had merely gathered for a feast. "Welcome," a figure intoned, the voice smooth and unsettling. It didn't sound human. "We've been waiting for you." She backed away, instinctively, but the circle tightened. Panic surged, galvanizing her muscles. She turned to run, but the shadows behind her were no longer just whispers, they prowled within the clearing, encroaching, eager, their laughter now a cacophony of discordant notes. "Join us!" they chanted, the sound mingling with the crackling of the fire. Jenna felt her resolve crumbling. The weight of their intent crushed her spirit, their hungry stares burning through her like the fires they danced around. And then, in a moment of unguarded clarity, she realized this wasn't just a hunt. It was a ritual, a celebration of terror, and she was the sacrificial prize. "Jenna!" A familiar voice exploded into the horror, slicing through the darkness. It was her brother, Max, appearing from the trees, breathless, eyes wide with determination. "Run! Get out of here!" Tempers flared, hearts raced, and for a split second, hope blazed anew within her, ignited by the bond of blood. But would Max's arrival distract them, or would it seal his fate alongside hers? The figures snapped their heads at the sound, eyes glimmering with dark delight. Jenna took a breath, her mind racing. She had to move, but could she leave Max behind? As the shadows surged forward, she felt the ground beneath her tremble with their collective hunger. "Max! This way!" she shouted as she grasped his hand, pulling him toward the edge of the clearing. But she could feel the strength of the chanting behind her, echoing her name through the gnarly branches, trying to lure her back. "Go!" was all she could manage to say before drawing him into a sprint, firing the last of her energy toward the tree-line, the shadows undulating behind them, unable to break free from their fateful entanglement. Would they escape the hungry jaws of the forest? Or would they be dragged back into the darkness, pulled into the sinister revelry? The shadows whispered louder as they ran, join us," like an echo that promised no end. In the depths of the night, Jenna felt time stretch, the forest closing in once more, hungry for its next victim. With every frantic step, the ground trembled beneath them, as if the very woods were conspiring to ensure that their escape was just an illusion. She had to keep running, keep moving. But how far could they go before the night finally claimed them? Branches whipped against Jenna's face as she and Max barreled through the darkness, hearts pounding in sync. The malevolent chant echoed behind them, wrapping around their senses like a cold hand gripping their throats. "Faster!" Max urged, his breath quickening. They darted between trees that loomed ominously, their gnarled roots clinging to the earth like the fingers of something buried deep below, clawing to be set free. Jenna felt branches snagging at her clothes, dragging her back into the shadows. Panic surged. She twisted her body, forcing through the grasping limbs, desperate to escape the pull of the gathering. She couldn't think about what they wanted. Survival was the only thought echoing in her mind. In the distance, the laughter from the fire rang out in a sharp crescendo, piercing through the night air. It seemed alive, singing their names as if it were a siren song meant to draw them back. "Jenna!" Max it taunted. "Keep going!" she screamed, fear sparking in her eyes. The darkness felt alive around them, shadows darted, twisting in and out of view, like hungry predators waiting for a chance to strike. Then came the first sign of hope. A faint light flickered ahead. It emerged from a thicket, flickering like a dying star. For a brief moment, Jenna felt a surge of relief, but it was quickly swallowed by dread. What if it led to another trap? But there was no time for hesitation. Over there. She pointed, yanking Max toward the light. Jenna, wait, Max protested, but the terror in her eyes silenced him. They plunged into the thicket, the branches scratching their skin, tearing at their clothes, but the light grew closer, igniting a desperate hope. The shadows behind them swelled, snarling and shrieking, a cacophony of dark delight that threatened to drown them. Jenna burst through the underbrush and stumbled into a clearing that smelled of damp earth and moss. In the center stood an old, decrepit cabin, its wooden planks rotten and decayed. The light pulsating from within flickered ominously. It may not be safe, Max started, his voice low. Better than out there, right? She snapped, scanning the perimeter. A rustle in the trees made her blood run cold. They were coming. The shadows thrummed with anticipation, flared at the edges, almost tangible in their hunger. They rushed toward the cabin, the wooden door ajar, creaking as if inviting them. What if they follow us in? Max whispered, fear etched on his face. But what if they don't? Jenna countered, forcing herself through the door. Shadows clawed at the entrance behind them as they entered, sealing them off from the night outside. The inside of the cabin was dim, filled with dust and decay, remnants of a life long forgotten. A single oil lamp flickered on a rickety table, casting a ghostly glow across the room. Max cursed under his breath, heart racing. Now what? We're trapped. We hide, Jenna said, scanning the room. The corners seemed to swell with darkness, threatening to engulf them. She reached for the lamp, trying to steady its flame. Suddenly, the laughter outside ceased, replaced by an eerie silence thick enough to choke on. Time hung suspended. She and Max exchanged frantic glances. Did they know they were in here? A subtle scratching at the door made Jenna's breath hitch. They weren't gone, just waiting, craving. Get behind that cabinet, she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. Max nodded, eyes wide. They crouched, pressing their backs against the cold wooden wall, listening intently. But then came a sound that froze their blood. Soft whispers began to weave through the air, drifting into the cabin as if the forest itself had found a way to speak. Join us, join us. The shadows had followed them in. Each heart-wrenching echo could mean their end, and Jenna felt the walls closing in. Max, close your eyes, she murmured, her own heart racing, a desperate hope flickering in her chest. What if the whispers were a way in? What if they offered a chance for escape but at a terrible cost? As the darkness flooded the corners of the cabin, Jenna steeled herself. They could fight, or they could join the shadows. Outside, the laughter returned, sinister and content. They were still there, those figures waiting with glee. Jenna glanced at Max, uncertainty flashing between them. What do we do? He whispered, eyes glistening with fear. In that moment, Jenna felt the lines between hope and despair blur. A decision had to be made. Would they confront the shadows, or would they succumb to the terror embracing them? The dread inched closer, whispering promises of twisted secrets and unspeakable realities, and then the cabin door trembled as if something wanted in. What awaited them on the other side? The door rattled again, sending a shiver down Jenna's spine. She clasped Max's arm, feeling the tension seep into their very beings. The whispers outside grew louder, an insistent chorus that seeped through the wood, clawing at their resolve. Join us. They beckoned, the words dripping with a sinister melody that resonated with the despair their escape had wrought. Jenna's heart raced, the pulse of darkness pulsed louder than her own heartbeat. Jenna, what if, Max began, his voice quaking just above a whisper, but she cut him off. We can't give in. We can't become one of them, she insisted, shaking her head vigorously, trying to shake the crawling dread that gripped her heart. But as the shadows danced around the edges of the cabin, she felt the weight of their hunger pressing against the walls, the ancient cabin wanting to give way to the horrors outside. It was alive, yearning for their fear. Jenna took a breath, forcing down the rising panic. We need to find a way out, a window or something. She glanced around desperately, searching for an escape route. But in this thickening gloom, every corner seemed to blur together, the darkness whispering promises of surrender. Outside, the laughter rose again, a menacing harmony that sent a shudder through her body. Join us, it called, a seductive chant that threatened to cradle them in its arms. Jenna. What if they can help us? Max's voice quivered with uncertainty. Maybe we don't have to escape at all. Maybe we can negotiate. Negotiate? With monsters? She snapped, feeling betrayal coil in her chest. They want us. They want to consume us. The townsfolk, he started, but she cut him off again. I don't care about the town's folk. They didn't save Sarah, they didn't save anyone. Frustration burst out of her, clawing at the thick atmosphere that surrounded them. Max's face hardened, anger bleeding into fear. And where does this leave us, Jenna? We can't just hide. In that moment, the shadows outside clawed at the door, crashing against the wood with a force that rattled the cabin's frame. Still, in the chaos, Jenna spotted a small window at the back, murky with age but untouched by the fight. Over there. She pointed, hope fluttering in her chest like a mad bird. If we can get there, we might escape. Before she could take a step, the door lurched again, the hinges groaning under the weight of the darkness pressing against it. Move, now! Jenna shouted, grabbing Max's wrist as they sprinted toward the window. The whispers crescendoed, filled with shrieks and laughter, swirling like wind through leaves. They reached the window, and Jenna scrambled to push it open, feeling the frame resist as if clinging to something dark. Sweat slid down her forehead as she grunted, straining against the force. Just as hope flickered, the door burst open, spilling shadows into the cabin like a tidal wave. Jenna! Max cried out, eyes wide with fear. But she did not hesitate, she wedged her body into the opening just as the shadows lunged toward them, chilling fog creeping over her skin. Max! She could barely turn her head, panic gripping her. Jump! Now! Max's head swiveled, and she could see the inner battle swirling in his eyes. He was torn between the darkness that waited and the safety of a leap into the unknown. But before he could finish his thought, more figures entered, flanking the cabin, and Jenna couldn't wait. Gathering her strength, she leaped into the dark night, falling into the brambles below. The earth met her hard, knocking the breath from her lungs. She gasped, rolling away from the impact, looking back just in time to see Max following her flight, propelled by pure instinct. Time stretched like an elastic band, the shadows reaching and grasping. He hit the ground just as fingers of darkness curled around the window frame, grasping for their flesh. Run! Jenna yelled, fear propelling her forward as they sprung up, adrenaline fueling their escape. They darted into the tangled underbrush, the stench of decay surrounding them. Branches whipped at their skin, tearing at their clothes, but Jenna pushed forward, matching Max's pace, blind panic refusing to allow doubt. Time ceased to be a constant, all that mattered was distance, the gnashing of teeth and frantic laughter falling further behind them as they dashed through the woods, seeking the safety of the road that had seen their turmoil. Keep going! She gasped, limbs screaming for rest. They burst into a clearing, the world suddenly explosive with moonlight, reality crashing down as they found themselves at the edge of the darkened forest. Yet, confusion wrapped around them like a fog. They could see the town in the distance, its warm light beckoning like an angel of salvation. But shadows lingered, watching from the edges, waiting for the moment they would falter. Max looked at Jenna, eyes wide with shared disbelief. We can't trust the light. It doesn't matter, we're not going back. She insisted, turning away from the darkness behind them. In one synchronized motion, both of them broke into a sprint toward the town, fueled by a primal urge to survive. Anxiety bubbled in her veins as the road stretched on in front of them, the weight of terror crashing behind, shadows ready to reclaim their sacrifice. As they reached the edge of town, breathless and heavy, the memories of their harrowing escape momentarily stilled. They stopped, glancing back at the darkened woods, knowing they had left something behind. But as cries from the depths circled back, Jenna clenched her jaw and shut her eyes tightly against the dark memories. "Leave it behind," she whispered, grabbing Max's hand. Together, heel to heel, they stepped into the flickering lights of Willow Creek, leaving the shadows to whisper, taunt, fade back into the night. "Outside safe for now." Jenna pulled Max close, heart threaded with hope and fear. They had escaped, they were free, or so they thought. But would they truly leave the night behind, or would its tendrils forever entangle them in darkness? With a shuddering breath, they stepped forward into the unknown, aware that the true horror had just begun. Yet in that moment, they were alive, together, hope still flickered. And somewhere, in the lingering shadows, something waited. The night may have thrived, but the dawn was breaking, and with it, a resolve to face whatever came next, the darkness merely a haunting memory. Now, the question lingered, would they ever be free? You need to subscribe now for the spine-chilling stories to come. Smash that like button now to help the algorithm spread these terrifying tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to glimpse the terrors lurking just out of sight.